If I asked you to think of some anthropomorphic video game characters, you might rattle off some names like Sonic the Hedgehog, Crash Bandicoot, or Star Fox. Chances are, Klonoa wouldn't be the first character on your mind, except for the fact that you're watching this video. It's a shame, really. Each of the Klonoa games were generally loved by fans and critics alike, but they never sold well. Perhaps they failed to stand out in a market that was already crowded with animal mascot-driven platform games. Today, some collectors are spending thousands of dollars to get their hands on these games, so it's safe to say we'll be using emulation as we take a look back at all 8 Klonoa games, plus a few of his more noteworthy cameos. We'll also discuss what the future might hold for the franchise. Klonoa Door to Phantomile, 1997, PlayStation 1. It all started with 1997's Klonoa Door to Phantomile for the Sony PlayStation. It was here that we were first introduced to our beloved cat-rabbit hero in the world of Phantomile, where everything is powered by dreams. For this reason, no one is able to remember their dreams. That is, no one except Klonoa, the dream traveler, who is tasked with saving the kingdom from a menacing villain. To be honest, none of this made a whole lot of sense to me, but it didn't matter because the gameplay was solid, the graphics were beautiful, and the music was downright hypnotic at times. The game is a 2.5D puzzle platformer that puts 2D characters into 3D environments. The player gets to control Klonoa as he runs, jumps, and uses his floppy ears to briefly hover in the air. His most unique feature is his weapon, which is known as the Wind Ring. His wind ring is used to grab nearby enemies and either shoot them forward with a wind bullet or use them to perform a double jump. This dynamic serves as the very backbone of the game. You'll have to use the wind bullet in a variety of ways in order to defeat the enemies that stand before you and navigate through each area. You'll be throwing enemies all over the place, hitting switches, collecting items, and occasionally battling epic bosses. It's a fairly accessible and straightforward adventure, but there are a few areas that might make you stop and scratch your head a little as you try to find your way. I found a couple of the boss fights to pack a satisfying challenge as well. Overall, it's a true classic that is still enjoyable today and not to be forgotten. Klonoa Moonlight Museum, 1999, WonderSwan. Klonoa Moonlight Museum came out in 1999 from Bandai's WonderSwan, a handheld console that was only released in Japan and certain Asian markets. Despite the WonderSwan's black and white display and other hardware limitations, Moonlight Museum does a great job of capturing the feel of the original game. The sprites and animations look great, and all of Klonoa's abilities are represented here. The levels are understandably smaller than they would have been in a console game, so to make up for this, the game is even more puzzle-oriented. 3 stars must be found in each level in order to progress, and they are often locked behind doors that require specific keys. This is a concept that would carry over into future handheld games in the series. Since the game is in Japanese, I really couldn't understand the story, but that didn't make the experience any less enjoyable. It's inconvenient to emulate though, as the screen orientation and control scheme switch between horizontal and vertical depending on the level. This is something the WonderSwan was uniquely designed for, but if you're playing on PC, you'll need to frequently rotate the game's display and remap the controls to make it playable. On the other hand, if you manage to find an actual WonderSwan, this is a great game to pick up alongside it, even without any knowledge of the Japanese language. Klonoa 2, Lunatea's Veil, 2001, PS2. Klonoa first arrived on the PS2 in 2000 as a secret character in Namco's racing game MotoGP, but the following year treated us to what many consider to be the pinnacle of the series, Klonoa 2, Lunatea's Veil. This time Klonoa falls from the sky into another land in peril where he meets new friends and encounters new enemies. Largely, it's more of the same gameplay we loved in the first game, but about twice as long and so much more polished. Klonoa 2 looks absolutely gorgeous on the PlayStation 2. Gone are the 2D sprites. This time everything is fully rendered in 3D with characters having a black outline cartoony look. The world is more detailed, the frame rate is smooth, and honestly I still can't get over how good the game looks whenever I go back to it. The core gameplay remains essentially the same as its predecessors. It's still a 2.5D puzzle platformer and Klonoa still has the same abilities. However, you will come across many new enemies and environmental elements to interact with. There are also some exciting action sequences that have you hoverboarding down river rapids, waterfalls, and more while dodging enemies and grabbing items. Klonoa 2 Lunatea's Veil is an excellent game that stands the test of time and really deserves to be re-released on modern platforms. Let's keep our fingers crossed for a remaster, but more on that later. Klonoa Empire of Dreams 2001 Game Boy Advance. The first of 3 Game Boy Advance games, Klonoa Empire of Dreams takes place between the events of Klonoa 1 and 2. This time Klonoa wakes up in a place where dreaming has been prohibited by a bitter emperor who suffers from insomnia. Rather than face severe punishment for his dreams, Klonoa is given the chance to make things right by defeating 4 monsters who are threatening the land. The game successfully takes elements from all of the previous titles in the series, including the core gameplay established in Door to Phantomile, the hoverboard segments from Lunatea's Veil, and the puzzle-heavy star-collecting focus of Moonlight Museum. Empire of Dreams also adds movable blocks, which may not seem very noteworthy in theory, but actually have a huge impact on gameplay. Blocks can be thrown at enemies, used as a platform to jump on, or block wind currents to allow access to certain areas. It seems like a small addition, but adds so much more depth and variety to the game's puzzles. Overall, another great entry in the Klonoa series and an excellent title in the Game Boy Advance library. Klonoa Beach Volleyball 2002 PlayStation 1. After getting lost in the puzzles of Empire of Dreams, I was relieved to dive into Klonoa Beach Volleyball for some casual arcade sports fun. Released only in Asia and Europe on the original PlayStation console, Klonoa Beach Volleyball lets up to 4 players compete in a friendly game of volleyball. The single player mode will show you the ropes and teach you the controls before ultimately putting you up against increasingly skilled opponents. The mechanics are simple and easy to learn with basically just a pass button and a hit button. Even though I stupidly checked out the Japanese version unaware of the PAL release, I had no problem learning the basics. What sets this title apart from other volleyball games, however, are the special moves. Each side of the court is divided into an imaginary 3x3 grid with 9 general points of impact for the ball to land. Imagine a game of tic-tac-toe. Each time you score, the area on which the ball landed will be marked on an icon near the top of the screen. After you've created a straight line on the grid, you'll be able to execute a special move that includes an epic animation and awards extra points. Gimmick or not, this really adds to the gameplay as you'll be encouraged not only to score, but to utilize the entire court strategically. I had a blast with Klonoa Beach Volleyball. If you like crazy arcade sports games, you should definitely check it out. Klonoa 2 Dream Champ Tournament 2002 Game Boy Advance. Klonoa 2 Dream Champ Tournament is the second Klonoa game to hit the Game Boy Advance, and is very much like the one before it. That's by no means a bad thing if you enjoyed Empire of Dreams, mind you. There are new puzzle elements introduced, new enemies, and new story characters, including Klonoa's rival Gantz. The puzzle platforming action is great as always, and there are some tough boss fights. The hoverboard segments have changed from side-scrolling to a pseudo 3D perspective. The music can get extremely repetitive as the same tracks play out over multiple levels, and I spent way too much time stuck on certain puzzles with my pea-sized brain. Overall, a worthy successor to Empire of Dreams and the last traditional Klonoa game on the platform. Klonoa Heroes Densetsu no Star Medal 2002 Game Boy Advance. Klonoa Heroes Densetsu no Star Medal was released in Japan in 2002, and as of the time I'm writing this, is the last original Klonoa game. It takes a departure from the traditional puzzle platform gameplay that the series is known for, and instead plays like an action RPG. Klonoa doesn't pick up and throw his enemies anymore. Instead, he simply hits them with the wind bullet, which now has 2 different forms, a blue attack and a red attack. Each one is effective against specific types of enemies and can be performed with just a press of a button. The graphics are nice and the gameplay feels good, but without being able to understand much Japanese, I got stuck rather early in the game. There's a fan-made English patch online for which I'm grateful, but large amounts of the in-game text were not translated, so I didn't really understand what I was supposed to be doing. Too bad the game was never released outside of Japan. Guest appearances, manga, and so on. Over the next several years, Klonoa would star in a 2-volume manga series and make cameo appearances in a number of other Namco games. Most notable are 2002's Alpine Racer 3 for the PlayStation 2, where an OP hoverboarding Klonoa can be unlocked as a playable character. And 2005's Namco X Capcom, where Klonoa and Gantz are not only playable characters, but play significant parts in the story as well. Namco X Capcom was never released outside of Japan, but there is a really good English patched version online. I highly recommend checking it out. Klonoa 2008 Wii. Finally, in 2008, a remake of the original Klonoa, Door to Phantomile, was released for the Nintendo Wii, this time simply titled Klonoa. It was slightly divisive among fans. On the bright side, the game had never looked so good. The modernized graphics really shined on the Wii, and for some this was considered the best way to experience Klonoa's first adventure. On the other hand, subtle changes had been made from Door to Phantomile that put off many longtime fans. For one, it was made easier in several ways, including giving players a larger health meter. Also, Klonoa's iconic made-up language was replaced by full localized voice acting. I can't speak for the Japanese version, but the English dub was horrible. These differences and other small changes were controversial among fans, but the game was mostly true to the original. Unfortunately, 2008's Klonoa remained a Wii exclusive, and no more Klonoa games have been released since. What's next? For nearly a decade, all was quiet in the world of Klonoa. A movie was reportedly being planned in 2017, only to be cancelled in 2019. Then, just when all hope seemed lost, a flicker of light appeared. In September of 2019, a trademark was registered for Klonoa of the Wind Encore, and fans around the world erupted with excitement. No official information has been revealed about the project, or even whether it's still actually in the works. However, given the title, many people are speculating that this will be some sort of remastered collection, perhaps bundling the two main console games in the series. Here we are in 2021, well over a year since the trademark was filed, and without any official announcements. Maybe it's been cancelled, who knows? Personally, I would be willing to bet that it has not been cancelled, but maybe postponed. Let's not forget the impact that the pandemic has had on the entire world, the fact that it's not over yet, and that productivity in nearly every industry has suffered, had to adapt, and sometimes become very backlogged. Perhaps Klonoa of the Wind Encore is still quietly in the works, or waiting for production to begin due to higher priority projects or industry delays. Whether it's a remake, a remastered collection, or something entirely new, the thought of a new Klonoa game after so many years is certainly something to be excited about. And if it sells well for a change, there's no reason to believe that we won't be seeing more Klonoa titles in the future. But what do you think? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Thanks for watching today. See you next time.